I'm 24. I'm currently a master's student at the Europa Institute studying European law and international law, and I'm from the UK. Well, I've been living in Germany since this whole thing kicked off, so I'm not fully sure of what everybody's exactly been doing. However, over the weekend, I must admit, I found that John Major, by the way, being a former Prime Minister, turning around and saying that both campaigns were basically misleading the British public and causing scare was potentially the best thing I've heard throughout this whole campaign. I'm slightly worried that it is going to be who shouts the loudest, because a lot of people just seem to be listening to political figures they like. For example, if you're fans of UKIP and Nigel Farage, you're going to listen to them, and vice versa with Boris Johnson. Whereas people who like Cameron, they're going to listen to what he says, and Corbyn. So I think it is going to be a case of which political leader you like rather than the arguments, because the arguments are so mixed up at the moment, and no one seems to know exactly what is happening. This is tricky because, as I just said, from what I've gathered anyway, all the arguments seem to be mixed up. The Brexit party is saying how much it's costing, and they don't take into fact the rebate that we get back from the EU, which is something that Cameron and the Bremain people are saying we need to take into account. Then you've got the immigration problem and the security issues. I just think it's a combination of a lot of things. A lot of British people don't necessarily realise what the EU is, and a lot of people are ignorant to what the EU is and what it does. And I feel that a lot of people should have been better informed about things that come from the EU. For example, a lot of British people seem to believe that the EU enforce a lot of laws on the UK, and a lot of our workers' rights we didn't have until we were part of the EU. For example, working hours, minimum pay, all that kind of stuff has come from the EU, and a lot of British people don't necessarily realise this is a good thing that's come from the EU. They think it's come from our parliament and not from Brussels. I think it's the immigration issue. We've never had a problem with immigration. Well, we've had people leave, but people don't seem to take into account the amount of Brits leaving, the amount of people coming into the UK. They just look at the amount of people coming in and don't factor out the fact that we're also leaving our country to go and live in other EU countries, like me, for example. If you'd asked me this about 6 months ago, I would have said definitely staying in. However, the polls are constantly flipping and changing around, and I would say it's really, really close. Last week, I saw for the first time had Brexit taking the lead by a couple of percentage points, which scares me because I'm for Bremain, but I can't tell. It's too close to call. I think a lot of younger people are more likely to vote in, as in to stay in, because they appreciate the fact they can travel to places like Spain and all that for their cheap summer holidays, and that's a positive thing that's come out of the EU, as well as the fact that mobile phone charges and all that are coming down. And a lot of people in the UK have done the Erasmus programme and all that kind of stuff. So I think ours, especially my generation, are more likely to they've grown up with the EU. We don't know anything else. Pretty much all my friends are voting. I'm educating my friends from home as to what the EU is doing. They are probably getting very sick of me going, oh, and this is another thing, and this is another thing, and this is another thing. But I think it's an important issue that I don't think people have realised the impact that leaving this organisation would bring to the UK, and I think people need to weigh up everything and properly inform themselves before, as I said earlier, voting just with who shouts the loudest. I'm definitely voting. I've got what's called a postal vote, which means I can send my vote through the post back to the UK as long as it's received by I think it's midnight on the day of the referendum, then it'll be counted.